for the Parks and Thursday, Tuesday, August 19th, it's called to order, so we would do a roll call.
Commissioner Bozo. Commissioner Jimenez.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner Vargas.
Here.
Vice Chair Martinez. And Chair Ramirez.
Here. Thank you. This time on the agenda, we do our flag salute. Emily, would you please lead us, please? Everybody, please stand. Well, is that?
I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Our secretary report.
Agenda was posted on August. Friday, August 15th at 4 p.m.
Great, thank you. At this point, we look to approve of the minutes, and I do have a comment on that. I think on item 12, under Martinez, it says Gilroy Little League. I think that's kind of a misprint on that. So 12.1, I think Mr. Martinez has Royal, that's Royal, the sign must, I don't know what the Gilroy Little League he says, so. That's the only comment I had on the agenda. You see what I'm talking about, that part right there? Okay, so that, other than that, I don't think that's, should be there. Other than that, jungle looks fine to me. Anybody else have any comments? No, okay, I move we accept the minutes as printed. Anybody, with the exception of the Gilroy, can I hear a second?
Yeah, a second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Oops, I just went out of order, didn't I, Pamela? We're talking about the approval of the minutes, which is the next part. I was talking about the approval of the agenda, so I don't have any, yeah, I messed up on that, so I was talking about item 6.
I was a little confused.
Yeah, man, my bad, John. My bad, John.
Thank you.
I was so focused on that 12.1 that so really at this point, we have to approve the minutes from last month, and I don't know if anybody has any comments on it. No comment. Any motion?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Second? Favor? Aye, opposed? Okay, so we approve the minutes as drafted. Now I get to the point of the agenda, and I mentioned 12.1.
I see what you're talking about.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so once again,
I think you moved and approved.
I moved and
those.
approved, so
Everybody
we're
was
ready to
okay
go?
with that?
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so we're now at item 7, introductions.
I think this would be a good time. So Pamela Brown, came to our staff as a management analyst, longest term here, but very recent. And then Brian Rodriguez is also, the intention I mentioned to the chair and vice chair, we're looking at, having each alternate, till the end of the calendar year, kind of learn the ropes here, and then perhaps one will choose to be the primary person to kind of staff this group and help you, or they'll continue to alternate. But we're happy and thrilled to have them on board and helping out.
Great, welcome. I'm sure John appreciates the help. Okay, we come to the point of agenda item 8, public comments on items not on this agenda. At this time, just want to remind everybody, if you come speak, you have a 3-minute time limit. If Brian or Pam, if you could keep a track of that, that'd be great. So talk about any things that are not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers? And if you want to speak, you should have filled out a little card. You can still do that if you want to. That's fine.
We'll just take.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Just come up.
We apologize. We're still trying to create a system.
Gotcha. So,
Next time we'll have a cover.
okay, so if anybody wants to speak on an item that's not agenda, this is the time. Yeah.
I just stay here.
You stay there, stand.
Here, we put this up here.
Mm.
Mm.
Come on up, Valerie.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Lott and I'm just gonna read if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm here to, on behalf of the families, volunteers and young athletes of Gilroy Little League. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Gilroy Little League's been a cornerstone of our community for over 70 years. It's where kids learn teamwork, sportsmanship, and resilience. It's where friendships are formed and where families come together to support a stronger community. Humbly representing the more than 100 volunteers that make this happen every year. We're proud to serve nearly 650 of Gilroy's youth each year. But today we're here to talk about a growing concern, our field access and conditions of the fields. First, access to the fields for both practices and games have become increasingly a challenge. Gilroy Little League's main mission is to have fun and to develop players, both of which require consistency. Not having a place to practice or play games works against us in our mission. The limited access to fields is caused by two main factors: increasing competition and the restriction from using the Unified District's field. An easy solution that we asked the commission to resolve is to open access to Gilroy Unified School District fields. Second, field conditions are of significant concern, particularly as it relates to player safety. Gilroy Little League primarily uses the Gilroy Sports Park, Christmas Hill Park, and Los Animas Veterans Park, with the latter two being the main areas of concern. The condition of the fields at Christmas Hill and Los Animas Ballpark pose significant safety risks and detracts from the experience these kids deserve. Uneven surfaces, cavities in the outfields, poor drainage, ripped and sharp fencing, and outdated infrastructure overall are not just inconveniences, they are recipes for injury and barriers to participation and development. We're not asking for perfection, we understand there are constraints and competing priorities, but we ask for partnership. We're asking for your support in prioritizing improvements to the field access and condition for Gilroy Little League and the broader community. Specifically, open up the fields for community program use, invest in maintenance and improvements, and engage in long-term planning to realize the vision of Gilroy Sports Park, all of which will benefit our youth. Improving the fields isn't just about baseball or softball, it's about investing in our youth, our families, and our community at large. When kids step onto fields that are cared for, they feel valued. When families gather at games, they strengthen the fabric of Gilroy. And when we invest in our parks, we invest in the future of our cities. We're ready to collaborate, we have volunteers, ideas, we even have access to funds. What we need is your support to help make the access to fields and quality a priority in your agenda. Thank you for your time and service, the commitment of Gilroy Little League and their youth. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. Take your time.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Al Castro. I am here representing the hard work of the volunteers to make Gilroy Little League a success. And with the 650 youth that we annually serve, it is my pleasure to speak to you regarding the opportunity we have. I'm here tonight to follow up on the words that Valerie previously shared. Specifically, I would like to address and mention of the access of funds that we have, meaningful differences to our community parks and our youth recreation experience. In addition to city funding, Gilroy Little League has access to additional source of funding, the ballpark fund, made possible through generosity and dedication of Gilroy Little League families throughout the years, specifically in 2021. These funds were raised by the community, and while they're managed by the city of Gilroy, they are earmarked specifically for the enhancement of our local ball fields, utilized by Gilroy Little League. The exact language in the agreement stipulates that funds shall be used solely for the purpose of building new facility or improving or enhancing existing facilities, which will directly benefit baseball, youth softball, and or Gilroy Little League baseball within the city limits of Gilroy or within a facility under the control of the city. That means the funds can be invested into your entrusted interests, improving and enhancing the most dilapidated and unsafe city baseball and softball parks, specifically at Christmas Hill and Los Animas, before our season starts in March of 2026. Gilroy Little League is not only willing but eager to share the cost of improvements. We believe that better ball fields mean better experiences, not just for our players, but our families, coaches, and broader community. However, as Val noted, the current state of these fields undeniably are unsafe, raise concerns of risk and major community hazard. We believe Gilroy's youth deserves more. They deserve a place where they can be safe and have fun without worrying about injury or harm. In fact, we are one of the very few organizations willing to invest our own dollars into city parks, enabling the city to generate incremental revenue from other renting organizations during our off season. This is a unique opportunity. The ballpark fund gives us a head start, but collaboration is key. We're asking for support in prioritizing field upgrades, aligning resources, and helping us navigate the process to ensure these improvements are suitable and impactful. Together, we can transform Christmas Hill and Los Angeles ballparks into vibrant, safe, and welcoming spaces for our local youth sports. Let's make sure our fields reflect the pride and potential of our community. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you.
Great. Anyone else? Mr. Hilton.
Commissioners, staff, the public, so I'm Zach Hilton, Gilroy City Council member. I just first want to thank you for your service and also encourage you as you're developing these projects and policies, start writing them down, build a resume. I was a city commissioner, not too long ago, and someone told me to start doing that, start keeping track of stuff you're working on. This is also a pipeline to get up on the dais and serve your city in a different way. So I want you to have that realization and start really keeping track and journaling what you're doing. I'm also here to talk about some CIP projects that are top priority for me that I'm working on. Not only because when I was a commissioner serving on our bicycle pedestrian commission, I helped put these CIP projects in place, the same way you guys did with the pickleball. So it's a long game. It's something that sometimes there's funding gaps and you go out and get them. These three specific projects, I was able to secure $5.2 million by working with our state and federal legislators to getting those budget appropriations where they bring funds back into the city. These projects were unfunded, and these are something that it's a relationship building, right? So it's something that you're able to go out there and say, hey, we do need funding for these projects because they're unfunded. Those three ones are San Ysidro Park, the Healthy Living Advancement, Lion Street Trail west of Santa Teresa Day, and the Gateway Senior Apartments pedestrian crossing safety improvements. You can look up all of those on your on the CIP through the city's website. I'm also in support and receiving monthly updates on the Civic Center master plan and of course the Los Angeles pickleball. When it comes to policies, there's two of them that I'm working on right now that are on our legislative work plan that you will be included in as well. That's the first one is the policy to direct general fund annual surplus to park infrastructure investments. That will be coming back to you as we work through that. Also, there's a joint use working group that I convened and that Luis and Emily, and there's two GUSD board members that are on there too. We're really looking, this is going to be on the GUSD Gilroy City Council next February 2026 agenda, and basically we're looking for long-term solutions on joint use agreements that are opportunities to have facilities and uses that are for free. And so three things we're looking at right now are El Roble, the park that got fenced off, to reopen that back up to public when GUSD is not in school. Rod Kelly, same thing, and then the South Valley Middle School pickleball courts. When it comes down to the budget, you're going to be talking about that later tonight, but I just want to let you know that when it comes to the beer canopy, tablecloth, entry fees, all those items that you guys want to have included to get out there and reach out to the community, I hear you, the council hears you. We're supportive of it. You've got a great staff that'll guide you through there. There's multiple ways to get funding. Measure B, education encouragement through VTA is another one. I'm currently trying to figure out what your future allocation is. That's a route, but staff is also very well aware that even though it didn't get captured in the current budget, we do budget amendments all year long. And if I need to write a memo to get it back on a future city council agenda item to do a budget amendment, we can do that. But you got a lot of resources in this room, and you'll go over it later tonight. There's options for everything. Lastly, I just want to say, keep up the great work. Thank you. We don't live in silos. I watch all your meetings. I watch every commission's meeting. I can't be here the entire time tonight. I'm taking Avery over to CrossFit. But I just want to say, if there's anything I can help or advise you in your role, please reach out to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Any other open comments? Wonderful. Okay. Gilroy Parks and Rec Commission Youth Access Scholarship.
Thank you, Chair. I think when we landed on putting this on, we had every hope and intention that Javier would be here. Who spearheaded a lot of that work, although I think there's other things. George, did you?
No, I wasn't part
I
of it.
thought there were,
I think
Adam,
he was
I know
on that-
Adam did, I thought some other folks did, but
Luis, did you work with him?
No, he did most of the work. Yeah, I worked a little bit. He did most of the work.
obviously, and this may be something that we really push to the September meeting when Javier can be here and be more helpful in terms of explaining this. So, the materials are here. There was an application filed. I believe we received a $5,000 grant. That grant was written after some conversation and discussions and direction by this commission to keep it focused on a very limited area, and this was basically by lower income youth as opportunities and access to recreation opportunities. So this is actively in place. We have other this supplements other funding that we have for scholarships. But I think the question sort of arose in the conversations with the chair and the vice chair a little bit as to the question as to how and whether this should be prioritized in any way. And I think that was sort of the reason for this to reach to a business item level rather than just a report. Again, I could not get my hands on between this and the item coming up, the actual grant application. I'd asked for the copies of that and materials, and this does not include that. It is just the application materials and the like. So I'm struggling with giving you much in the way of information. And that's why I was suggesting that perhaps this push to September for a conversation. Also, Adam obviously has a role in this, and so I was not able to attend tonight. And so there's some of those issues as well, but this obviously, and I would point out that the grant application has some specific provisions, I'm sure, in it, and those were written here, which limits to youths qualifying for reduced price lunch or basically on public assistance Medi-Cal. So I'm not sure if that's adequate prioritization or whether there's additional prioritization that one is appropriate and two is allowable under the grant as it was written and the approvals that were there.
Thank you. I did talk to Javier a little bit and we met, and I have a little bit more context. I mean, in our materials, you'll see the cover letter for the scholarship. It's worth, I think it's something that needs to be read. And it does list the qualifications, and it's for youth that are eligible for reduced price lunch or receive federal benefits. The application is in English and in Spanish. It is for basically Gilroy Rec Fund activities. I think we've just released the fall guide already, right? That just came out. So this is the time that we should at least publish the data. So whether we get, I think the rec guide's already come out, but if we can put it on our email blast, get it out to the community just to make people aware that this is here and available. Now, the approval process goes through the people, South County Youth Task Force over at San Isidro Park. So once the applications are filled in, you have to take it there, get signed up, and the funds are released. So I think the most important piece from my perspective right now is at least getting that published, getting the information out there so people are aware of that, so they can apply for the scholarship. One of the things that we've always talked about as a commission is how we don't have that, and that some of these programs that we offer are expensive. And a lot of our kids can't afford a $250 soccer camp or, and this kind of addresses that. And here we now got the money from that, so I think it's important that we get the information out there. So John, anyway, we can work through Adam, just get the information out there. So at least make the public aware that it's there. So we can pull in, and that'd be great. And then, yes, I would like to maybe keep this on the agenda next month when Adam's here. He can tell us more what he needs to do to get involved, or how we coordinate with the South County Youth Task Force people to make that happen.
Just to be clear, this is the full application, right?
Yeah, I think this
Yes,
is, yeah,
everything.
yeah,
It's the application.
yeah.
Okay. And then, I mean, I know how like the Parks and Rec, have all their flyers. Can we get like packets of this made to hand out to people? Or at least like the cover, I don't know, the cover letter, or would it be an issue to have like copies of these printed that we can distribute?
I think that'd be a great idea. Yeah, anything you can do. I don't know what the typical process is when we go out to the city and, what we bring out, but at least publishing it and having it online ready to go, I think so.
Yeah, I asked about getting some documentation printed and I think I don't know, John, can you tell us the process if we wanted to like get these in the little flyer holders and stuff? Do we have to go through someone?
I'll work on getting them.
Okay.
Getting them out, we can get them out in the front area there. There's handouts, there's
To the
materials.
library
Yeah.
and stuff.
Any other ideas on how to publish this would be great, so.
I'd be happy to like go to the library and ask them if they could put it places
don't
if you
need to
get
do
the
that.
copies.
We can do that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Sure.
anywhere, any of the resources too, yes, anywhere. Yeah,
If we have some kind of flyer made or something.
just
That
some,
promotes, reduce registration fees or whatnot for these programs. Putting it up at the register, they would register at Parks and Rec, right? For this?
Yeah.
Having it posted up there and, yeah, whatever volunteers you need, we can.
what about on, kind of more on this part of town, do we have a place we can, that that we can put that out?
Yeah, San Isidro, they have bulletin boards.
I'm
up
sure
there.
they probably have this already at San Isidro, I would think.
I would hope so, but
Yeah.
we'll certainly make sure they.
I can follow up I can follow up on that,
Community
just-
Center.
Yeah, I can follow up
their
on that, see if they
events and
have it.
activities there.
We can go door to door too. I
Yeah.
have plenty of volunteers who do that.
I know that the community center, from my experience there, they could canvas that community out pretty well. They have, I believe it's called, in Spanish, it's called community leaders. And there's mostly like mothers. There's whatever the word might be.
Promotora?
Promotoras, yeah. So promotoras promoters of the community that canvas, so I'm sure that if we could reach out to Javier, see if there's a option for them to kind of do this, because not too sure if this is just through us or just available through any agency, and if they could help us out, because it is in collaboration with them, then that way we get the word out, use this application to get a scholarship to apply or register for any of the activities on the.
And I know through the South County Youth Task Force, we have access to the Alexander Apartments, Sobrato Apartments. And, locations like that to be able to promote and to get the word out, so.
So any promotion you can do, and then like, I'll follow up with Javier and San Isidro to see how it's going on there, and if we go through the city channels, maybe that's enough to get it out. Great,
Is there like an expiration on the funds?
until they run out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
Is there no flyer other than the application itself?
no, not that I'm aware of,
Is any of this online?
not that I'm aware of.
So we just gotta get the word out.
We will endeavor to work with Recreation and see what they've got. Out and what's available online and what they've done. And this to some extent should go hand in glove with our own, information about our own. Scholarship opportunities as well, so it's not just this, and I don't know that it's until it runs out, that's the issue, I have not seen the letter. The grant letter that we got that said, this is what your conditions are, this is your timing of this, so I wouldn't like to leave. I don't wanna leave that in the ether that just says it's till we use it all, because there may be a drop dead date on this in terms of use, and I just wanna be clear
Cool.
about that. I apologize, we were trying to get that information, Javier, at a conference he had to go to, and was not successful with Recreation
Okay.
finding that.
So we'll follow up on that, that'll be something we pick up next month as well, okay, great. All right.
We can give you an update on where we are with.
So now, I think we're on 9.2. I think this turn over to you, John, on the RFP for Parks Master Plan update.
Thank you. So. Parks Master Plan update was identified on the commission's work program that was submitted to the city council. It was something that was very, very adamantly pushed for when I went to the park, to the planning commission for the CIP annual general plan consistency review by them. So they certainly were advocating this. As noted in the report, in the 24 to 28 capital improvement program, there is a project that is basically entitled Parks Master Plan Update. However, that is currently an unfunded project. So you have funded projects at various years on a 5-year basis, and then you have a list of projects, programs that sometimes just don't have a funding source identified, but are identified as being important and something that is wanted. So the commission submitted your work program, which included this. The city council indicated, and this is part of the other item we'll discuss a little bit more about later, said that we don't have the funding or funding identified for these items, including the Parks Master Plan, but we're interested in pursuing it. And we want to see if we have in fund year balance available or other funding sources. And as such, they said come back at a later time, but we are willing to consider it and talk about it. This was for staff, the first piece of this, which was just to start the work in terms of preparing an RFP and sort of laying out what that plan would look like. A unique piece to this is that there is both a Parks Master Plan and a Trails Master Plan. Your proposal, and I think it was a good choice, merge those together a bit, which was a Parks Master Plan and recreational trails and master plan. So it sort of took out some of the more dirt and truly pathways and open space pathways and trailways, and really said, let's take a look at, this is my interpretation, at least staff's interpretation, take a look at the bike paths and the more active transportation paths and link those up with the Parks Master Plan update and take a look at those issues and focus there. So that's what this has attempted to do. This by no means, it's in your packet, is complete. It again is a draft and is a start of the work. Items have been identified that should be attached to this and are linked to this. So we're going to continue to work through that process. But again, this was really a start of a conversation to say, okay, do you still feel that this is the appropriate pathway to go, which is to do master plan update? Whether you still feel that master plan update perhaps should include the parks and the recreational trails, as this is intended that we do so. And then just any other guidance that you wish to offer with that. It is somewhat unclear at this moment in time exactly how this and other items that the council has put onto the work plan will be brought back to the council, how those will be prioritized, whether they'll come as individual one by one pieces, or whether we'll come back through with the whole list with a process of some prioritization of those. So it's unclear for me, and we're working through that process with the new interim city administrator in terms of how he and council see that process working out and working through. But again, I think at some point this is important to get out into the process, into the community and into your thought process in terms of this is what we might look like and what this might look like. I will say one last thing and then I'll hush up. This RFP is really took one pathway, which is that it's intended to provide our consultants that we propose on this some discretion and leeway to come up with their idea and their vision of what that scope should look like and what the document could look like, plan for. Rather than us, the other alternative to this is to go into an extensive, like doubling at least the size of this document and going into a line by line by line by line item of the scope of work. I started on that line by line by line scope of work and sort of reverse course about halfway through it with the idea that, this is a path I'd prefer to do, which is to allow one of the consultants to that propose on this to come back with their vision and how they deal with it. We definitely need certain parameters on this in terms of what we need. Obviously, we need demographic information. We need information and details about our existing conditions, existing parks, things of that nature, existing trails, paths. But I think it's often good to let folks who do this for a living, to some extent, tell us what their vision and how they think that we might produce this. These tend to look a little bit the same. If you go online, you'll find 10, 15 of these ultimately adopted plans. So there isn't a great deal of variability, but there is some variability. So if you think that this isn't detailed enough, say it now, it'd be great to hear it. This is not a last chance, I think, to have a conversation and provide input. So I just want to be clear about that too.
So let me just start by saying what I recollect. You guys can tell me, please let me know what your thoughts. My recollection is that we wanted this document so that as things came up, we weren't saying, well, this needs to be fixed, that needs to be fixed. We can follow a master plan that says, here's the condition of the parks, this is what needs to be looked at. This is what's going on in the future, and this is where you should be spending your resources. This is what recreation should look like. This is what the park should look like. That was my recollection of why we wanted this. And the city council has agreed that, yeah, they'll look at getting that. Now, I see a parks plan, the trail plan, facilities plan, and recreation, all those dovetailed in. I guess, is that a common way for these plans to be presented with all those folded into one document?
It's not uncommon. The recreation piece is tends to be the wild card a little bit. And the council is planning to have a conversation on the 8th of September, I believe, is tentatively on there to talk about the aquatics piece. They were due to return back. And I believe that will likely also evolve into a conversation about the broader perspective on recreation programming. So I think some of you were at the council meeting when that conversation occurred. And so that is going to be an extensive, probably 1.5 year process of going in, evaluating, doing assessments, doing survey, looking at what we do in the recreation programming. So from that perspective, it is intended under this scenario to be separated from it, but ultimately coming back and feeding the parks master plan and that recreation assessment, informing each of the documents a bit. And then what I have seen is that this kind of comes at one point into not a combined document, but a combined policy statement and policy recommendations in terms of that. Now, I would say this, just to be clear, the parks master plan is generally So I describe it this way, the general plan, the city's general plan is at a 30,000 foot level, you know, if you're flying. The parks master plan gets around 10,000 feet. It's still policy driven a lot, but it's more informed by actual data and by input from the community in terms of what their vision is, in terms of what are the important activities that they want, what kinds of amenities. Looking at the individual parks and identifying that. Little League, for example, has a place to input. We can look at those, and there's an assessment of those parks, of what existing conditions are, what could be improved. This also looks at what should we be looking at in the future parks. We have still development and anticipated population growth to occur over the next 20 years. And the plan would look at and continue to look at 15, 20-year horizon. What should those parks also look at, and what should be the minimum kind of amenities and what types of amenities? You know, dog parks in 2002, I think when the original Parks Master Plan, I don't know that there was a dog park within 20 miles. You know, now there's multiple dog parks. Pickleball was not thought of. So there's all these evolving and you know, recreation activities that we want to try to look at and try to think about and project into the future. So I just want to be clear, there's usually a next level, which is below the point of the Parks Master Plan, which is facility master planning, which is to say, look, we're ready to go and make a heavy investment on Name Your Park. And so we're going to do a broader, more focused effort on that, talk to the community, talk to the users, and we're going to actually plan for what kind of additional improvements, amenities, and activities that we can provide here, and looking at whatever it might be. So that's sort of the next level down from that point. But these two documents ahead of that are critically important because they start to majorly inform you know, the types of activities, uses, amenities, things.
So this RFP is for not the implementation naming the park. This is the higher level, the 10,000.
This is the 10,000 foot, and this will include some implementation because what this RFP does is say, look, we want to talk about prioritization. We want to talk about prioritization of particular parks and of particular amenities within our parks, perhaps. This RFP does that. So I think that's an important piece because that will drive that next level to some extent in terms of whether we're looking at a blanket approach to say, hey, we want at least half of our parks to have this amenity in them. So we can look at that from that perspective. Or we could say, we want this park to include this amenity that may not be appropriate in El Roble, for example, but it may be in Rainbow, yeah, for example. So that's the kind of deal, but that also helps prioritization process and helps prioritize where you want to focus your next level of detailed work if you go that route.
Got you. And then I have a few more questions.
Sure.
Oh, do I have to ask you?
Yeah, please, yeah, please, yeah, go ahead.
So I need to ask you?
No, just, yeah, you can just, yeah, go ahead. And then we'll hear from everybody. Go
No,
first.
I will say that
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it from a formal perspective. The appropriate thing is basically if you wanna ask the question, it's just ask the
So
chair.
you have the floor. Ask your
He's
question,
offered you
and
the
we'll move
floor
on.
now, so I'm.
Okay, got it. So I know that there is an unfunded CIP specific for Parks Master Plan. Is there also an unfunded CIP for the Trails Master Plan? Because I don't think I saw that.
No.
Okay, so this particular document is just adding that on. And then, got it, yeah.
So this picks up one portion of the existing Trails Master Plan, which is basically the recreational paths and trails, the paved bike paths and pedestrian paths.
And
It pulls that out.
when was that last done?
The Trails Master Plan was done in 2005. The last update to the Parks Master Plan was 2004. So.
Oh, really? I thought it was older than that.
No, 2002 it was adopted.
Okay.
It was updated and there were some major updates, I think, done in 2004.
Okay.
Last amendments I could find. So we're still looking at a 20-year-old document. both of
Yeah.
them.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'm curious why there isn't a CIP for the trails master plan if it's so old.
You know, I can't speak to that. The 24-28 CIP was done almost 3 years ago, went through the prioritization process. I, given that this was unfunded, we, itself, and this was, I think, a higher priority for everyone. Usually the Parks Master Plan. In part, I would suggest that the trails are being built along with development. Most of them are not being publicly built. And those are sort of already in the plan and already connecting, and we're looking at connections. I'm guessing, but it's only a guess, that the assumption and the feeling was, if we have to pick one, the Parks Master Plan is the one that we would choose to move forward with, but that's only a guess.
Gotcha. I mean, personally, I think I would prefer that. I mean, I want trails too, but I would prefer the RFP, and I haven't read the whole thing, to be honest, to be
When you
more.
say prefer the
focused.
RFP, what do you mean by prefer the RFP?
I would prefer the RFP to be asking for more park
Parks
information.
master plan.
Yeah, and I want trails too, and if that's an add-on, I'm totally good with it, but I want it to be more heavily focused on parks.
George, comments,
No
questions?
comments, but I do agree with the last comment that Emily did say. Focus on the parks with an asterisk and trails kind of a thing, so that way we are spearheading what we have to offer, and then also, if possible.
Javier?
No, Jesse, no future comment. I'm sorry, no comments.
Yeah, okay.
I do have, one more thing about what you mentioned about prioritization. Doing this type of project, can you expand on that at all, or is that appropriate to ask you? I don't know.
Sure. And it can come in different ways, obviously. What I would recommend in the scope, which is what's there, is the idea that the consultant and staff would take what has been provided through community outreach process and help and survey and other ways, to look at somewhat, to some extent, some of what we heard with the Civic Center Master Plan process in terms of people weighing in, and it was an iterative process. That becomes then sort of a prioritized list. And again, that at this point could be in general bucket of types of amenities and improvements that the community would like to see in its parks. It could be specific items that they would like to see in specific parks. And I don't think at this point we should limit that conversation. I think part of that's an iterative one to see, okay, are people really focused on the individual parks and trying to identify how would they like to prioritize those things? And I have a sense that people feel strongly about that. They take their community neighborhood parks and, and they're interested in other parks, but a lot of communities, they tend to focus on their neighborhood park or community park, as it may be. So I don't suggest limiting that, but I think it can be of both priorities with that.
Okay, I guess I'm.
Maybe I'm not understanding.
No, my question was regarding like staff's time and how, if we're funding all these projects, which obviously I want, that's great. Like, when would this happen and like, how would it be
Oh,
covered?
sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just like,
That obviously that's first and foremost dependent upon the council's authorization of funding for this. I've been asked how long do I think that this would take? My guess is somewhere 14 to 16 months to complete from the point of award of contract. Probably 14 month, could be compressed a little bit. I was doing the research on the current Parks Master Plan, and I think I think it was 4 years. I started, I think, in 98 and went to 2002 when it finally got adopted. The general plan was 7 years, so,
Is that
when I,
normal?
when I,
That's crazy.
well, I finished the general plan one time, it took 10 years, so it's not,
That's wild.
it's not exactly the norm, but it's unfortunately sometimes, a war of attrition to some extent to finally get to that point. So it's easier, I will say this, even though it's 20 years old, it's easier to start when you've already got a master plan and some foundational support to that. We also have GIS, we have, the mapping and information that we didn't have, in 98 and 2000. So, there's a lot of ways that we can, I think, compress the time. We have, new ways to outreach to the community. So the world's a lot different than it was, in that environment. But I think when reading through some of the records, it would just, the community was very interested, very engaged. And, one thing I will say is that they had a steering committee made up of community members. While, I appreciate that, I assure you that process will add significantly to the time, effort, and money, that it takes to get to that point. And I think that's also a reason why that process went. And usually what happens when you get into extended time, you also have turnover in those members, and then you have to kind of re-educate and kind of deal with that. I really see in this instance, the commission being, and you've shown your willingness to, to participate and be active and work. I think the commission is, incredibly good, overall community body to take that on and run from that, and would suggest that that would be the basis of what we proceed with. But if there is an interest, either by you or ultimately by the council, that's something we would have to build into the process, and that we would add additional time and effort to this.
Thanks, Jan. I think I want to move forward with this and then kind of, I think we've got the input from everybody. I like what both,
I'm sorry, I have one more. I know we have time, but I do have one more thing to say. I am for funding this. I think it's awesome, like it was in our request, but if we go back to the meeting when we prioritize things as a commission, I think out of the 4 projects that we submitted, this was at the bottom. So yes, we want it, but also as a recommendation to council, we already prioritized what we thought was most important. If that's clear.
yeah, okay. So, I think what we need to do now, John, it's kind of just, do we need to make a movement of how we want to focus? We're just listening right now?
Yep.
Okay, I kind of echo Emily and Jorge's comments about, what the focus of the plan should be. It should be Parks Master Plan. The extent that you can fold in trails and like that, but I think the focus should be Park Master Plans, what we wanted initially. I think we just stay that way and we should move forward. All right, so let's move that on. Okay, come to the part of the agenda about Parks and Commission budget. So, Arjo, I think you're up.
Good evening, Parks and Rec Commission, Harjit Khan, I'm the Finance Director. I know the commission's request is very focused on its specific budget item, but I'm gonna take this opportunity to address that as well as provide you a holistic just an overview of how the city's parks and recreation is funded. So there were some specific items that were submitted to me in email, so I'll go ahead and do that. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'll walk you through. Either we can take questions during the presentation or save them all at the end.
Why don't we save them all to the end, Hojo, so we can move quickly and then we'll go one by one and.
Okay. I'll order. I'll go ahead and, project out loud. I think you can hear me again. If you need me to, pitch loud, I'm happy to do that as well. So again, it's providing you the overview of the city and specifically the park and recreation programs budget. What is a budget primarily? It's a financial planning document. Legally, the city is required to adopt a budget, by July 1st of each fiscal year. The city recently went through a biennial budget development process where we adopted the budget for the next 2 fiscal years. So fiscal year 26, which commenced on 7/1/25, as well as a budget for the next fiscal year, 7/1/26, which will commence. What it does is it outlines essentially the estimated revenues, the monies the city's going to bring in the given year, and then the money that the city's gonna turn around, program, and expend. And what it does is it achieves mandates and strategic goals establishments that can control their priorities and such. I'll cover the biennial budget process as well as part of this slide, I'll achieve to kind of address the question that this commission has specifically to their request. So the city every 2 years commences its budget development process in January, where we host basically a kickoff meeting with the departments, with the city council. We basically conduct strategic planning sessions. As part of that budget development commencement, what we do is through the city administrator's office, which is responsible for putting out a recommended budget, we solicit input from various boards and commissions that are advisory bodies to the city council. Specifically asking them to start planning for their work plans, starting developing any kind of budgetary input that the city council should focus on as part of their upcoming budget, as well as any specific budget requests that the commission that they themselves have. So that process, every 2 years, we go through that, and then we get a host of recommendations and requests in addition to the work. So for the Parks and Recreation Commission, as you submitted your work plans as well as your budgetary input, as well as specific dollars that you're requesting. So that gets deliberated to basically the city administrator's office. We put forth a recommended budget. And the budgetary input that we receive from boards and commissions, again, range from a couple $100 to several $100,000. Again, the city has very limited resources, so the city administrator, as part of the recommended budget, will go ahead and either make a recommendation to put forth a specific project, input, or any priority that they believe generally the community or the council has an interest in. So for example, pickleball courts came through the Parks and Rec Commission, but it has also been in conversation in the community, the city council. So based on those, the feedback from the Parks and Rec Commission, the city council, as well as the community, in the recommended budget was the plan to go ahead and include that as a CIP budget. Again, not at the recommended dollar level. We'll take the idea and then we'll go ahead and develop a budget and we'll put that in there. The other piece is specific to the commissions. Generally, commissions will ask for monetary values with respect to either attending any kind of trainings, conferences, and things of that nature. Those typically across the board get automatically recommended to be included in the budget process. So we budget for those types of initiatives. So when for Parks and Rec Commission, we included general training dollars, but I believe the request that this Parks and Rec Commission is interested in getting additional dollars for is a $17,000 proposal estimate that was submitted for supplies for community outreach events and things of that nature. So it was not included as part of the recommended budget. It did go before the city council when the budget got adopted. A motion was made by Councilmember Hilton to go ahead and make an amendment to the budget before it gets adopted to include this component. The final budget motion that was made did not include that friendly amendment. Purely, I think it was a long night. It's not to say the council did not support it. I think it was it just got lost in translation. Is the best I can explain it. So fast forward to that, the issue has came up. It was communicated to this administration as well. As you know, the city's administration is in a transition period. So what would help us is I think we have definitely communicated to the new interim city administrator that this is a request that possibly is coming back. What would help us is, I've heard a couple of variations. One is the original proposal. And then, a much smaller proposal of specifically just canopies, chairs, tables, things of that nature. What would help us is if we could get a clarified, either through the chair, a memo, a letter. If the intent of the original proposal still, or if it is a modified version is a request, and then we can go ahead and make recommendations on what the funding source is. And one through the administrator's office, to bring this forward, at a future meeting. So kind of diving back to the budget. Once the budget gets adopted, as much as we'd like it to be set in stone, unfortunately, things change. We might not get the revenues that we expect. We might not, might have more expenditures than we anticipated when we budgeted. So throughout the fiscal year, departments, staff, we all monitor the budget. And we go through a process called budget amendment. So as we learn new information with respect to the budgets, either we're gonna not get enough money, or we are gonna get more money and we want to program those dollars. We will take periodically, time to time, budget amendments to the city council as part of our budget reports, outlining why we're recommending certain changes to the budget. So once the budget gets adopted in June, again, we don't start the process up again the following January because we have a 2-year budget. But within that 1.5 year period, we definitely, on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis, go before the council with recommendation. So that's, I hope that addresses that specific request, and the clarification will be super helpful for us. And get that. Now I'll shift over to the overall city and the Parks and Recreation program. If you're interested, again, I can zoom through this, or if you have any questions, show me at the end. So primarily, they're what I call, these are buckets. These are buckets of funds where the city receives the funds and they're appropriated to be expended. General fund is the most discretionary in nature because the largest revenue source it receives is from taxes, which includes your property tax, sales tax, hotel tax, utility users tax, and so forth. And that's the fund, those are the dollars that the community, the city council has the most discretion on how to allocate those resources. For the city of Gilroy, within the general fund, we primarily fund our public safety. That includes our police and fire, public works, our streets, parks, environmental programs, community development, economic development, and general governance. That means city council, our legal team, city administrator's office, HR, all these supportive function roles that provide. Special revenue funds are basically funds that we either receive through allocations from the state. For example, gas taxes that we receive, Measure B dollars, any kind of housing grants that we receive, they can only be spent on those purposes. They have to be put in those special funds. So that way we can audit them, that we're not commingling these dollars from any other purpose. The other 3 are capital development, self-explanatory, again, only used to build out infrastructure, cannot be used for operations and things of that nature. Internal service funds are inner departments that provide services to the other departments. So our IT, fleet, facilities, general liability, those are all internal service funds that provide services to our department. Last but not least, the city of Gilroy has their own water, wastewater, utility. We call those enterprise funds. So those funds, again, whatever we assess, collect from ratepayers, from the bills that you pay on your utility bills, we cannot turn around and spend it on any purpose. They have to be spent on water, wastewater operations only. So they are quite in separate funds. So for the purposes of today's conversation, the 2 yellow arrows that you see, primarily in the general fund, we have a budget that funds the parks activities. And then within the special revenue funds category, we have a recreation fund, which is essentially an extension of the general fund, where we establish a separate account just to track revenues and expenditures, so they're not commingled in the general fund. So within the general fund, again, as I indicated, largest source of revenue is taxes. If you add all those up, it's approximately 75% of the city's general fund revenue comes from tax revenues. From an expenditure standpoint, these are all the, again, departments that are within the general fund. highlighted are the recreation investments as well as these parks and landscape maintenance. So for fiscal year 26. City council set a policy several years ago where they're going to take $1.5 million from the general fund. They're going to invest it in the recreation program services. So what we do is instead of, accounting for recreation in the general fund, we take it, we put the money out into a separate fund on an annualized basis. And then the recreation divisions program expends those funds. The second piece is the parks and the landscape, which comes under the public works department wing. That is the $3.4 million. And I'll dive into more specific on both of these items. So we take that $3.4 million in the parks and landscape, and how is that spent out in the city? It tells you here in personnel expenses, materials and services, and capital outlay. Personnel, $1.2 million in 26 is primarily 8.5 FTEs. These are staff that are maintaining or overseeing the parks program. Materials and services, the 1.5 is primarily largely the city's contract to provide landscape services for the citywide parks and such. The capital outlay of $500,000 as a level policy through the budget process, city council allocates some dollars to be expended on park infrastructure, park improvements. For fiscal year 26 and 27, we have allocated $500,000 in each of the fiscal years for park improvements. And these are some of the projects that John in his memo talks about that's included in the plan. Now let's transition over to the 1.5. So what happens to the 1.5 that comes out of the general fund? It goes in. So just highlighting here up on the top. From a revenue perspective, the recreation fund's primary source of funding is the $1.5 million that the general fund contributes. They generate about $700,000 in charges and services, which are programming, fees, things of that nature that they provide, programming, recreation purposes. Use of money and property primarily is our facilities, rental, park rental fees, and things of that nature. So for a total estimated revenue budget of $2.4 million for fiscal year 4. And then on the expenditure side of things, we have personnel expenditures, about $1 million. We have a capital outlay of $900,000. This is your pickleball court in fiscal year 26 that's occurring. And then materials and services, again, these are all contractual programming services that the recreation division hires, instructors, things of that nature to deliver the program. So that's $1 million. The budget for fiscal year 26 is about $3 million. And then what I've also provided on this slide is the recreation fund's estimated fund balance at June 30, 2025. We were estimating it in about $2 million. So if you were to take the, $2 million, you're going to bring in about $2.4 million, and you're going to expend about $3 million. You're net negative of about $600,000. That's essentially because we're spending down some fund balance to get the pickleball. In the following year, we're estimating we're going to bring in about the same amount of money, and we're going to spend actually less. Instead of we're going to bring in 2.4 and expend 2.1, leaving a surplus of about $300,000. So that $300,000 essentially goes back into the recreation fund for future allocations. From a personnel standpoint, again, 2 program areas. The general fund parks and landscape gets you about 8.5 FTEs, positions, full-time equivalent. Ranging from our deputy director of public works to maintenance workers, our senior maintenance worker, as well as operations services supervisor. Within the recreation fund, specific to the recreation division, we have 7 positions, 7 FTEs. Our recreation manager, we have 2 coordinators and supervisors, a management analyst, as well as a office assistant. So that's the person that delivers the services to those programs. Specifically, there was an ask in an email, what the future outlook and the strategies are to grow the funds or programming, parks and recreation programming. As the commission is talking tonight, as you are aware, adopted in the council's work plan, as well as your work plan is review recreation services and programs holistically taking a look how you grow the recreation division, the programming, as well as the infrastructure such as parks and trails and things of that nature that you're talking about. The other component is to go, obviously offering more fee-based programming within the recreation services or focus on what programs are not cost recovery to generate, achieve cost recovery and some of those programs. The other component could be effective marketing and promotions. We talk about, how to reach specific age groups. Are we taking the strategies, implementing the strategies that we're getting the maximum outreach as much as possible that we're trying to achieve. So also that includes, again, how we create our promotional materials, special events and so forth. Last but not least is the secured funding sources, right? So as we know, as we saw just now in the recreation department, $1.5 million of general fund dollars is the investment that comes in. And we also know 75% of the general fund revenue is taxes. So essentially, the nexus is we are, funding through our general fund tax dollars, the investment of $1.5 million within the recreation department. Opportunities to look for grants. The city has a grant consultant on retainer. Periodically, they will present opportunities to the city leadership on grants we're pursuing. We have had a lot of success over the years. However, with the change in federal administration and the policy, we are seeing a lot of those discretionary grants are being either canceled or the funding is running down. So to the extent possible, as Councilmember Hilton shared with you in the immediate prior years, we've had really good success in securing those numbers. So to the extent those opportunities are available, our grant consultant makes us aware, and then we identify if there's a project program that's worth pursuing. Again, then there's a competitive nature. It's not just Gilroy. There's many cities across CA that are fighting for those dollars as well. So you have to be competitive. The other components are donation, fundraising, sponsorships, and I'd also like to mention recreation and parks districts. So these are special districts that could be established and pursued. It takes a much larger effort to pursue something like that, but if the commission is worth interested in exploring, I think that could be very good. Last but not least, with specificity to donations and fundraising, the city council has adopted donation and fundraising policy. It encompasses and includes the Arts and Culture Commission as well as the Department of Education Commission. So I believe that policy is included in your packet. There is a process that's outlined in there specifically fundraising and how that should be coordinated. So if you have any questions, have an answer that. The other is just partnerships with other organizations or foundations. I reflect back on my career. I came from Morgan Hill. One of the projects that I got to be a part of was the National Grid Foundation part that they business struck with. So there's organizations like that. Again, not 100% funded, but it is a partnership where the city raised resources. National Grid Foundation contributed their resources as well. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Let's go start with you, Jesse, and go down the line with any questions, comments you have on the budget.
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. So in the past, thank you for sending this because this was kind of unclear to me as a commission member for the last 2.5, 3 years. And I noticed that we're gonna have a net negative this year in the recreation fund, but that's because we're building the pickleball courts. In the previous years, there were surpluses to the tune of $400,000 a couple of years. So we had a pretty good surplus. How is that communicated down? Because that was when I found that out prior to our budget meeting, that was news to me. So again, there's a philosophical aspect in how you look at recreation services. It's cost recovery, which means you break even or you make a profit at it. And it seems to me we've been making a profit at it. So I guess that's a city council question, philosophical, but I guess the communication from your office through John to us would be helpful to know if we do have run surpluses, that we have some wherewithal to do something with that.
Yeah, I think, again, great question. I think, whether it's, we're running surpluses due to cost recovery, I think that is a question that needs to be answered. As I mentioned, it is $1.5 million is coming from the general fund dollars. It's not necessarily cost recovery. It's an allocation of the general fund resources.
Right.
It could be, on top of that, we are generating additional programming dollars, but I wouldn't necessarily call it cost recovery because I don't think recreation in general would be cost recovery. So what we find is we're having more resources than we're expending. What is the reason for that? And is there an opportunity to sustain that? If it is sustainable, and I think that is where, if you recall, the recommended budget included, we did you don't want to jump on a 1 year space and add on expenses that are going to increase your expenses from an ongoing perspective. So once you have an established history of several years of saying, yes, we're comfortable to say the way we're running the current program, we have history, that we can grow the program by either adding additional positions or adding additional services. I think the recommended budget attempted to do that, but the council shifted the priority to say, before we go ahead and add those positions, let's take a pause. Let's actually study the services and programs and see where we want to have. So I think that's the effort that we'll undergo
Yeah.
on that. And then with respect to communication of the dollars, what I would encourage is perhaps through the staff liaison periodically, as we deliver updates to the city council, we can perhaps report out a short memo, and it could be agendized as a consent item just to let you know how the fund is doing.
That would be helpful. Thank you. The other comment I have, just a couple of questions, just from my perspective. Do cities typically have their own park and recreation fund with separate sources of funding that go outside of the general fund or sales tax dollars? Is that something that you see typically, or is that?
Not in my professional career. It depends really on the size of the city and how the city, I think some of the larger metropolitan areas like San Jose and LA, perhaps that's probably expected, but for smaller cities, not that common.
Yeah, because one of our work plans is just trying to find separate sources of financing for parks and recreation, whether that's, pie in the sky, sales tax measure, or some kind of measure that comes with a separate source of funding that's dedicated, public safety tax that comes directly to Parks and Rec. If that were to happen, would we have a separate Parks and Recreation fund at that time?
I think if you were to go before the voters and ask for a special sales tax to fund recreation services, then by law, we would have to ensure those funds are set aside in a separate fund and are expended on the manner that the voters approved it to be. So similar to what the city attempted in November 2024, was very focused on public safety. So police and fire, infrastructure and services. Although it didn't meet the required threshold, the results were encouraging. So what you're, I think, asking would be something very similar, but instead of public safety, it'd be for recreation, parks, trails, etc. The other mechanism I talked about is there are special assessment districts as well, where you can actually form a special district. The city limits will ultimately become your district overlay or the boundary, and either a property tax special, parcel tax type of a deal that goes on the property tax, generates those dollars, and then those dollars collected are deposited again in a special fund to be expended on just those purposes.
Thank you. One more question. Councilman Hilton earlier said that he's working on with the city council on the surplus issue, that if there was a surplus in the city at the end of the year, that some of that to be decided would come to Parks and Recreation. Would that be separately identified in a separate fund, or how would that work?
Correct, yeah. So as part of the budget development, I believe it was Councilmember Hilton that raised this as a work plan item to establish some sort of a policy that would take the year-end available or savings, if you will, and then divert those for park infrastructure is what I recollect. So we are planning to take forward to the city council the preliminary year-end 25 fiscal year financial report sometime late September, early October. That would be the appropriate time for us to have that conversation with the council and seek their direction to say, okay, now we really know how we ended the fiscal year is a good time. If you would like to develop some sort of a policy, what would you want that to look like? So it is on the finance work plan, so I expect at that point we'll be having that conversation.
Great. Thank you, Ursula. Appreciate it. Emily?
You answered most of my questions with your questions. I do have a question, a follow-up, basically, a little bit more in depth to what you asked about the surplus that we had the last 3 years. So is it? Do we generally, are we spending those funds down or are cities doing that? Or is it healthy to keep a little bit of a budget in there?
I think it's a policy question for the council to address. I think, as you remember, coming out of COVID, the recreation vision was severely downsized. And then coming out of COVID, there was a council, basically, policy to state, we're gonna invest a maximum of $1.5 million on an annualized basis. Where I think we kind of accumulated the fund balances is, although we started putting the money into the fund, because we still had COVID restrictions on, gatherings and things of that nature and programming that we could deliver, that took a while to open up. We didn't retract those dollars. We kept on putting the monies there. So that contributed to building up a fund balance. Now, the city council could theoretically state, within the fund, recreation fund, we want to adopt a specific policy. We want to maintain at all times X% of our operational budget, similar to what the general fund does. And they have not had that conversation yet, but.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have another question about that. I don't know if it's now I should mention it, or I know you talked about when you're presenting to the city council, giving us like a more detailed parks, like on a quarterly basis, I think you do the check-ins. But just so we can make sure, I don't know if this is our role or not, to be honest, but if there's excess funds sitting there, I think we should be using them. Personally, I don't think they should just be sitting there. They're not gaining value. The parks need help. So if we could, get a report like you mentioned and like make sure that they're being used and.
Yeah, and I think the city council recognizes that as well. And I think that's what resulted in the appropriations for the pickleball. The fund balance is not large enough to accommodate all the projects that you had put forward, but we feel like, if we're able to get on some sort of a every 2 years accumulate dollars and do one big project, I think that's a good strategy as well. So,
Joe, just ask a question.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah, please.
my takeaway is the 1.5 was initially intended to cover operations side. And that's also a policy decision of the council if they wish to allocate the excess or whatever to capital, right? That, which they did this budget year.
I think what they did is they allocated some of the available fund balance for capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
They have
that
not
1.5 is
the
intended for as an
operation.
investment in operations, not in parks capital, right?
So aside from the 1.5 that goes to the recreation, within the general fund in the parks division, we allocate $500,000 for other general park activities.
Okay, got you. I
Yes.
was curious.
It's operational, that
Yeah.
is operational fund, not capital, so that's a policy question.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
George,
no question.
thank you, Roger, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, old business, we're at 10.1 now. Yeah. We want to talk about the update on the renewal.
Thank you. I know
Thank you,
we-
nice talking to you.
We gotta figure out a schedule, so I haven't forgotten. All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Arjo. Thanks, figure we might as well give you an update, I know that, this was an item for, the last meeting, so, I put this, I'll put it.
Is it up?
So I think most of us are aware and all of us are aware actually is that there was, but the chair wasn't there at the meeting when this was discussed, but the commission agreed to allow the creation of a mural on the handball courts at Los Animas. You requested that a community meeting be held to allow for additional input on the design of that mural. This came to the commission on a rather expedited and hurried path up through the Arts Commission, and which was intended by the end of July to come to the council. That was because there was an understanding that there was private funding available to complete this work. Subsequently, it was found that there was some miscommunication and there was and is not currently full funding available for that work. There was a community meeting held as requested by the commission. There was some input as indicated in the memo. There was some modifications suggested and requested. Some of those were made and others were not. And at this point, the city is awaiting word from the funders that they are prepared to fund the project. And at that point, then this mural would come to the council for consideration for approval or not. So at this point, we are in a holding pattern and nothing more to report than that.
But if we wanted to, okay, speak.
Yeah.
If we wanted to get some kind of mural on the courts. And get someone to do it, that, is there funding in the department to do such thing, or
Is there
funding to?
Funding?
Yeah, or do we have to maybe draw up a grant, get a grant, be able to do that? Would that be the approach, and then bring it to the, parks?
well? Where's Harjo when you need him?
Cause I have this like, this great idea, right? I have a great idea that I wanna bring.
You know, I struggle with that answer. You know, honestly, the council controls the budget, controls how and where and monies are spent. And obviously, there could be a project, a proponent who comes forward and says, we want to do this, would you fund this? So that certainly could come to the council and ultimately they could choose to fund that. There is not a specific process at this point that is set up to allow that. It's really structured around private parties coming forward and doing that. So that's the easiest and simplest answer I can give you. But it doesn't mean that the right, the vision in the eyes of the community, the right project couldn't be supported. But I think that is sort of what's called slippery slope, which is where do you stop and where do you end, and kind of keep going from there. There is policy for public art, and that's an area too that could be looked at, but those are tied to and connected with new development occurring. And we could certainly look and see down the road whether those policies would perhaps allow funding and things of that nature, or whether it's strictly to be associated with the development itself. You've seen some of those statues and designs out around and part of those projects.
Thank you.
Comments, anybody else on this item? I guess I do want to chime, I wasn't here for the last meeting and I take partial responsibility for it going through so fast, because I was approached by city council members, says they have somebody, they have the money, it's been approved by the Arts and Cultural Commission. We're ready to go out and paint the handball courts, and in my mind, I was going, well, that needs beautification. That's a good idea. If you got the money, it's ready to go. And the Arts and Cultural, the Arts Commission passed it. We should take a look at that. I've heard different stories that that's not exactly how it played out. Now I'm hearing that the money was there, that it's not there anymore.
Apparently it was never, apparently it was just a misunderstanding in terms of it.
So in my mind, did we get the right amount of community input? Because now I learned my lesson. Before we do anything, we gotta definitely roll out to the community before we put anything in. Did we learn, did we do that enough that everybody here is comfortable that whatever goes up there, you're good with it? Because if that's not the case, then I think we need to put the brakes to this and start over again. That's my 2 cents. And I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I just feel that whenever someone comes to present something like a mural, there should be some kind of community input. We felt strongly about that, Martinez and I, and, we voiced it, and so that's why it was kind of, there was a condition behind it, so supposedly he had this community meeting that we weren't aware of it. We would have loved to have been there, but it played out the way it played out, and
So are you okay that if the funding's there, that mural's gonna go up on that handball court?
I think there should be community input. It's a community park.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
Did we reach out to the community like we said we were going to?
Yes, apparently they did.
Okay.
We didn't. Apparently they did. They had this meeting, but I didn't see no signage sheet or anything to that nature that it really took place, but I don't know, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Well, it sounds like it did happen, but
Yeah.
you weren't part of that and you want to be a part of that.
Yes.
So, are you okay with going out and seeing whatever they did? You can see the documents or whatever.
Yeah, I know exactly where they had this meeting.
If
so
if you can do that, and maybe come back and report the next meeting to say, hey, you're comfortable with it. Then we could make some decisions. I don't want to make a decision on this. You don't have to make a decision.
Well,
Nothing's
yeah,
happening.
I wanna be clear, it's not about the design of the mural that this commission is responsible for, it's about the location. Obviously, the location and design go hand in glove, and I think we all understand that, but clearly there is a distinct role, Arts Commission is looking at the aesthetic. You're looking at the location, and whether it's appropriate for Los Animas Park or any other park with that deal. Just want to be clear, there was not a condition attached to your action. It was a request that you do so, which they did comply. I'm sorry that wasn't noted. It happened pretty quickly because we believed that it was going to the council. If there is a desire to have a conversation about this, I guess maybe authorize the chair to work with me, and ultimately work with Bryce to potentially bring that back in September or October, to have a conversation. If you're considering pulling back and saying, you know what, I'm not sure that that's the appropriate decision to put on that, as the commission, you could come back and we could put it on as, an agenda item for you to, in essence, rescind that original okay on that, and which would force anytime the mural, this or another mural at that location would come back, to have to come back to the commission for authorization and okay from you with it. And clearly, I think given we have additional time, there's certainly opportunity to get the word out and allow community members to speak on the issue of whether this is an appropriate use of the handball courts or whatever facility you're putting it on. So I think there's nothing wrong with asking it to perhaps come back to the commission if it comes back in the first place. But I think we can work through that a little bit, but that's the sentiment. And there's consensus on that. We can just leave it loose enough to basically agendize it, come back, and we could bring Bryce into the mix at a future meeting.
I'm looking at the motion that was made. So Commissioner Bozo made the motion, it was approved. Then Commissioner Miller did a friendly amendment to have that make sure that the public had an opportunity to do their input on the mural design before it goes to city council. So do we?
Which that did get met.
Okay.
Again, I think what I'm hearing and what I understand is the question of how well that community meeting was noticed, who it was noticed to, and whether there was adequate input.
Right.
And I believe that there was adequate and appropriate input into that.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair.
With that. And so I think, that's a question, and I think at the time when we thought that this was going to the council on July 28th, and we'd be painting it right now, before the wet season started and everything of that deal. And, that was adequate and sufficient. In an imperfect world, we have a different world, and if the commission feels like it should get a second bite at just having that conversation, and understanding what the new, newest design is, it's perfectly appropriate.
I think that's a motion we can make, John, correct me, if the motion is, and I'm just talking about the motion, the motion would be that, to move forward with the mural once adequate, once we're satisfied there was adequate community input, so we'd have one more look at the proposal and a question about the community input, then we would move forward. Does that make sense? I guess what I'm saying is, we want to look at it one more time, just to make sure that there was adequate community input before it gets finalized. So I don't know how to put that in the right words, but that's what I think you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's-
Can I chime in?
Yeah, please.
Can I suggest that maybe the Arts Commission kind of come up with something that where they hold a community hearing at one of their potential meetings to kind of regulate that in a way to get community input through the commission to recommend a decision to then be brought to us because they were the ones that listened to the community. Does it make sense? So if there's an artist that wants to put up a mural on any wall, not just this specific scenario, it should go through the commission.
I agree.
The proper channel. So that way there is a hearing that is notified to the citizens of Gilroy, come out, voice your concern. We could have all of us be included because it's going to be in a public forum. So that way everybody is informed of such a change in the community. I think that might just be a best scenario in a perfect world.
I would say, I think you're right. Because anything beyond that gets us back kind of in that argument that says, hey, it's not this commission's role to judge the design. It's to say, is it okay at this location? I think everybody, my sense was that no one was really arguing that beautifying the handball courts at Los Animas would be a benefit. The Arts Commission is the one really responsible for the design and looking at the design. And I think this commission could could ask staff to convey an interest back through Bryce to the Arts Commission to say, we'd like you to take another look at it, given that we have time, that you take another look at the final design of this and allow the community input on a less truncated and expedited timeframe that we had before, because they were jammed to get something out to you, and it just kind of worked its way to that point. So if that sounds okay,
I like that.
let's just go with the
Yeah,
consensus,
yeah.
shaking the head. Yes, we can take that. run with that.
Yeah, you can reach out.
And then we can come back next month and give you an update on where we landed with that. If not before that point.
Thank you, John.
Good.
Okay, great. I think that takes care of that
Yeah.
issue. So we're ready to move on to Public Works Parks update.
So I hope that what we've started here is of help to the commission. Obviously, staff is trying to get a little more written material to you in advance, so it gives you a little more context and it's not having to be walked through and explained at the meeting from scratch. So I hope that's helpful. We'll continue to work through that. And I noted our system is still we're brand new system. We're still trying to figure out how to put the staff report on one item behind the policy package for the, so we're still trying to figure out software. So bear with us. We're working on it. So it was my hope to work on developing sort of a monthly update report to you, dealing with three pieces: the recreation update from Adam, kind of the parks update that comes from Matt and John, just in terms of what's happening kind of right now, what's in the immediate future maintenance work, kind of the efforts are going on, activities, trends, whatever it might be. And then sort of the third piece of that is trying to highlight some of the capital work, because I know that comes up in the questions and kind of came up tonight as part of the Little League's a request for additional funding, and so that was the intent to do that as well. The objective was not necessarily to do the extended staff update that we've done in the past, but to answer questions and to provide any updates on anything that may have arisen since we prepared these little reports with that.
Okay, so if I heard you right, the written materials for us to look at, if we have any questions and we put on that, and yeah, okay. I'm okay
That
with-
would,
Sean, did you have anything you wanted to specifically? I know we were talking about Arbor Day.
Well, you want to bring an update on Arbor Day, if we could do that?
We're recommending to do Arbor Day mid to late October. Pick a date within that range. And also we would like to if it's okay with the Parks Commission to do Sidney Casper Park. We're missing about 10 trees in that park that we'd like to replace. We're kind of targeting mid to late October to kind of stay with the fall time as we've been doing in the past, getting increased chance to get settled before summer. And with the current projects, we kind of running into our seeding project and our trying to fit in between our seeding, overseeding and turf fields and upcoming restroom installation at Christmas at Los Angeles. Well, without that outfit.
you have a question, just point of clarification and then question, I will have to be leaving in 4 minutes, so does that break quorum? And
Yes, it does.
So, I would probably motion to table everything else and adjourn the meeting, but before I do, I have a question regarding Christmas sofa. You said seeding the grass, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
the ranch side.
The branch side, so does that mean the whole grass area is gonna be off limits to any activities? Just so
Yes.
to give growth to,
It will be closed from September 8th through October. The middle of October 25th. So in that time, we kind of target that at the same time. Sports park now is the baseball fences are removed, so we. Focus on the other parks.
with that being said, what's gonna be in place to kind of prevent just local use, individual use of the facility in order to, promote the growth of,
We're putting up temporary fencing.
okay.
So we didn't do right side last year.
And we know fencing always works, right?
That's,
It helps deter so many people.
right, right. That's
Gives them a
unfortunate.
chance.
Because we do need better grass fields everywhere, right? And it's fortunate. So I do apologize, Chair and everybody else, but I do have to be excused. So I technically, unless you have I have 2 more minutes. If
No,
anybody
no,
has a
so
question.
John, just a point of clarification, so we can't vote on anything because we don't have a quorum, but we can finish the meeting with any questions we may have, and is that how it works?
You know, we're skirting on the edge of a Brown Act, but what I have traditionally done to get around that is that allow when you lose quorum to basically, in essence, convene in essence as a committee and just finish up the meeting. Since there's no votes, there's no activities, and no specific direction, it's just reports.
Right.
So I think we can finish it out.
Right, perfect.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
I
you, thank you
appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Great.
But it's a little edgy, but
That's fine. We're not gonna vote on anything.
I think the clerk will and the city attorney will let us go.
The only other question I have on these reports at the end is that $500,000 per year for CIP projects. I think you had a list of what's gonna happen when is that something we'll report on every month or what?
Yeah, if you look at the CIP report,
What page is
if you
that?
look at the other projects, page 42.
Okay.
You can see a couple of those, or actually 3 of those. 4, 5, and 6 are noted as citywide park program funding.
Okay.
And those three are coming from that would come from that $500,000 for this fiscal year. We can share with you a bigger list. And in the coming months, that are our recommendations and with that, but those are just three that we're looking at.
Great.
And as noted, $500,000 does not go very far these days. Fortunately.
I do want to comment on that as well. I went down and looked at the tennis courts. And they look okay to me. Like I understand like there are some cracks for sure. But as far as priorities, there's parks. I just put in a request today, actually, is it Christmas Hill? Yeah, at Christmas Hill Park, the gazebo is being held up with a strap. Like, I just want to think, is this the right way to be using this money? You know what I mean? And I agree with the court resurfacing. We've talked about that. That was suggested in our work plan and budget requests. There's playground equipment retrofits, which I also have put into the C-Click fix. And John, I just want to thank you for being like so communicative in that. Like you're killing it. It's awesome. But I'm just curious where this came from, you know, because I think, you know, like everyone's talked about, there's limited funding.
Sure.
And we can see it. It's visually apparent that the park's infrastructure is falling apart. So I'm just curious where that came from.
It certainly came at the request and suggestion of members of the tennis club. I'll say that, but and Emily and I spoke about this last week. So thank you for asking the question and having this conversation. From the staff perspective, these cracks are only there's in 6 and 7, they're the two courts, and those are the two courts that are generally used by recreation programming. So they are important to the broader perspective, not just the tennis club. Those are actually extra courts and not used so much by them. They're used by them. And they have invested, I'll give you the credit, they've invested a lot of money into those courts with private funds. But those are going to start to fissure, they're going to start to grow, the cracks in those, and the cost of repair is only going to increase exponentially if we don't address those issues soon, and seal them up. And that's why we're looking to jump on those with it. We all recognize that there are a lot of competing interests in the parks. I certainly appreciate that. What I will say is that in addition to doing that, the resurfacing, our proposed resurfacing to fix the cracks there, this also, we're looking at the same likely party company to do the resurfacing of the other courts that we're looking at. So we're hoping to also gain economy of scale and better pricing on all of that, because we're doing both pieces of that, the tennis court and that other resurfacing. So there is a piece of that. If we just bring those folks out, those costs will likely go up on a per unit basis. So we're hoping to kind of mix that and get economy of scale. So those are the main reasons why we're suggesting that work to be done.
So speaking of that, I remember when we talked about the pickleball court. Also you know, I don't know, like that timeline was talked about with resurfacing the courts too. And so I'm curious why it was pushed out when you're talking about resurfacing everything, economies of scale, like doing it all at the same time. Like now this project isn't included in that timeline. Does that make sense?
So let me rephrase. Why don't we wait until we're doing the pickleball courts when we're doing surfacing? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I just know in the original conversation when we were talking about, you know, in our budget request that the commission submitted, oh, we should also resurface the handball courts and the parking lot and everything if we're gonna be doing this pickleball courts because economies of scale and now, you know, it's not on the same timeline. So I'm curious.
Well, there were many suggested approaches to, and I think when we talked about resurfacing, much of that conversation was rebuilding the parking lot. Not resurfacing like as in painting, or, you know, working on the basketball court. We heard, there was a lot of conversation.
Yeah,
about that.
I'm kind of with them. I thought our focus was the basketball court and the handball courts primarily. And it would be nice to do the parking lot with the lights, but that was a whole new thing.
Understood, but I just think when we got into the broader perspective and the broader conversation, the wish list included rebuilding the parking lot, resurfacing, but, okay. You know. Again. From staff's perspective, the tennis courts. Are only going to get worse and only cost more money if we wait. And the question is, do we really think that that's the appropriate thing to do? The commission can certainly weigh in and certainly, you know, and give your thoughts on that issue. And go from there, with it. If that's a consensus, and right now we can't really get, a consensus, so we can talk about that next meeting.
Yes.
And deal with it. But
Yeah, I don't know how we go about continuing the conversation, but
Yeah, well,
I think it could be helpful. Just like I said, like it's visually obvious how much work our parks need. And when I go out and look at the tennis courts, yeah, I can see a little bit of minor stuff, but there's other areas that it seems like we should focus on, because I know at least 4 of the tennis courts were just resurfaced in 2019.
Mhm.
So that's 4 right there, you know.
yeah, I guess my input on that is that I could see the fissures there as well. I understand it cost more, but our focus when we first put the budget together was to focus on the basketball courts and the racquetball courts. And there's a lot of people playing racquetball out there. So
Yeah.
I thought that was gonna be our priority, and it looks like it's moved. So I would like to bring this back up again.
we can have that conversation in September.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we're good on the report stuff. I think we can go into the parks. All right, I mean, I saw the recreation division update, John. I don't know, I'm just not here. The only question I had on that was aquatics. Is that, how much higher is that than last year? How much less? And I'd be interested to see how much that moved
Okay.
from this year to last year.
We again was this was the start,
Okay,
so
got it.
I agree with you that we need to give context,
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
numbers, context, all of that, which they're gonna be working on certainly on the recreation assessment and everything, that should be started here.
Okay.
We'll pass that along.
And since we don't, and then so we can move on to item 12, Sam, Mr. Bozo's not here. Jesse's here, Veer's not here, so it takes those out. And then Georgia, so all we've got is just Commissioner Miller with her parks, Commissioner Jimenez with his parks and mine, so. Talk about.
Sure, Farrell Park, looks great. Forest looks great. San Ysidro, I noticed they painted the building there, and it looks good too. Yeah, nothing that sticks out as a sore thumb, just see that, looking fine.
Commissioner Miller?
The sports park, I mentioned this in our first meeting that the swings were squeaky there and they are no longer squeaky. So that was like the minor little things. It's making a difference. It's awesome. I did want to comment, and I put in a C-click fix that the middle bathroom there has been out of order for, I don't know, like few months, maybe.
Sports park,
Yeah.
or waiting on a door. It's been in order for more than a few months, but some reason, manufacturer is process, but it's in the works, the doors kind of lost its backbone, it gets jammed, so that's why.
Gotcha. Okay, then Del Rey, it's a little far from me, but I went yesterday and it was super busy there. There had like a school event, so that was cool. And then as I commented earlier, I put in a request just generally there because the playground is old. And so I appreciate you updating that in the app. It's really cool. And I saw actually somebody in the community commented on that same post and were like, hey, I agree with this. So that was really cool. Thank you for doing that. Again, the pavement there, and I did see some of the pavement shaving on the sidewalk, which I didn't, now I was like, oh, I get what you're talking about now. I was like, but it around the park itself, there's still some like high points that we've talked about, but they're not even like colored or painted or anything. So maybe doing that, I don't know if it's a priority or not, but just to call it out again.
I know we're not really in comment mode, but I'll say this, there's kind of there are really two schools of thought when first of all, I think we still have some more shading and hopefully we can get some of those things down, but there are really two schools of thought. One is to highlight them, and the other is if you highlight them, then you're highlighting the fact that you know these trip hazards exist and you sort of set yourself up for the ambulance chaser or for someone basically seeking monies with it. It's a tough one to deal with. So we're really trying to figure out what is our answer. We did go and we didn't, but facilities did paint some around City Hall. So I'm gonna take that as guidance that says we can do this elsewhere. So we can look at doing that more. But we've taken a philosophy from the park side that for the most part, we were hesitant to mark those as much as we kind of like to, but.
Gotcha. I saw that they were marked in the past, like it's just. all
There's
of them,
some,
so I got you. That's interesting though. Thank you for sharing that. And then, Sydney Casper looks super good. The only thing is there's like some of the trees are like flooded. And it's like, it's going into the grass and I was like, maybe it's just like, I don't know, watering time, or I don't know if they're backed up or not, but I put in a request for that as well. It's not a lot, but the water does look like it's been standing there for a little bit. So I don't know if there's a larger issue or if that's normal, but
I think it could be. Time issue.
yeah, that's what I was thinking, because the other stuff was being watered, but I wasn't sure. And then I did use the trash picker upper thing and I went to all the parks and picked up trash, so.
For you.
Yeah, it was good. Sydney Casper had the most. If you're
Really?
interested. I know, I was
Yeah.
shocked too.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's all I have.
Great, thank you. For me, Butcher's fine. Roblay's beautiful. Thank you. I also did a C-clip fix for graffiti. I think it was done the next day. It was, man, just really well done. Thank you very much. Also got comments from the public saying, wow, that was fast. Ren's looks like Ren's fine, good shape. Sunrise is beautiful. There's some dead patches in the grass. I think it's just either hot spots because it's hot right now, but it's starting to get brown spots. I don't know if that's just.
The sunrise.
Yeah, just different parts of it in the grass are turned, but I mean, it could just be a summer thing, but.
They had a power outage last week.
Ah,
We reset the pump today.
okay, that's why it's. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Thanks.
So that's it. The only thing I want to add on my part is that, I did meet with the Gilroy Little League people. That does concern me. I think there's an issue. I know staff was working with them. They've got money and I know you're working at Crispy Hill Park with the gopher holes and look at what we can do there, but it does concern me. So I'm glad that we're working with them, trying to get something done out there. I think that long-term that understand that they used to have with the city needs to be readdressed because it doesn't look like it's applying anymore. So I think that's something that I've encouraged them to reach out to the interim city manager to do that. The only other thing, John, is the civic master plan. We did all this beautiful work and we've got a civic master plan. I think I just don't want to lose sight of that from the parks perspective, that sure keep moving forward on that.
Just from that perspective, it's the environmental impact report is in the process of being prepared. You can see all of that final document work probably coming to a head and coming to the council.
Great.
By June.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, that's the schedule that we're.
Okay. Wonderful. All right,
Still, if you want to talk about the Christmas Hill Day.
yes, please. Yeah,
Story walk.
yeah, item 13, yes.
Just pleased to say that we have been communicating. They got their free permit from us. They've pulled it, they've been issued. And they're getting ready to mobilize and finally do the work out there with
Great.
Story Walk.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for your patience on that. And
Well, thank you for yours.
I will report that Commissioner Bozo and I, mostly Commissioner Bozo, had the Italian Fest at the Gil Elks Lodge. He raised $5,000. That money's gonna be used to do a bilingual storyboarder at San Isidro Park. Learning our lesson, we're gonna go out, and make sure we meet with the community out there, what kind of, where and what kind of story it should be, and then once we get that understanding, we can move forward and implement the same thing at San Isidro on the bilingual, so.
Cool.
That more important, good. So any future commissioner items?
We can't do any of that.
That we can, Nathan, so I think now we're, this little committee is adjourned.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you all for.
Thank you
appreciate it.
guys so much.
Ryan Brown, thank you.